to my channel. My name is Lisa Alastuey, and on this channel, you will find a variety of inspirational and informational videos. If that sounds good to you and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Today, it is my honor to introduce our guest, Ron Harris, who is the host of the Ron Harris Muscle YouTube channel. He has been a writer and reporter in the bodybuilding industry since 1991. Not only is he an encyclopedia on bodybuilding, he lives and breathes bodybuilding, lifestyle, and sport. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, yes. So what initially drew you to bodybuilding?
I'd say before I knew anything about actual bodybuilding, I was drawn to heroic figures, big, strong guys, pro wrestling. I used to love wrestling on TV, guys in the movies, stars. I was a small kid. I was always undersized, a late bloomer, not very good at sports. So the idea that I could do something to transform my body to make myself bigger and stronger, and in my little juvenile fevered brain, I thought the guys will all be, respect me, and the girls will all be lusting after me, and I'll be this big jack guy. It was just a fantasy I had as this little kid back in the day.
Yes, yes. And so you even competed. Can you share a little bit about some of your experience with that and some achievements that you've done in competition?
Sure, I competed 24 years from 1989 to 2013. I started out in natural federations, primarily one that's no longer around called ANBC, that was mostly on the East Coast of the USA. That was a natural federation. I didn't do that well. It took me a long time. I competed before I had any business competing, but I just couldn't wake it up there. I was always a ham. I did school plays and stuff like that. So it came naturally to me, and I was always a really good poser. Moved on to the NPC later. I probably waited too long to go up to the national level. I just didn't think I was ready. By the time I got up there, I was literally a couple weeks from turning 40. I was almost a master already. But the best I ever did was at the show called Team Universe. It's now just called Universe. In 2011, I took second in the men's open heavyweight, which is one place away from winning the class. You still have to win the overall at that back in the day. I came back in 2013 as masters. I took fifth place in the masters division. Everybody that beat me, all the other four guys, they became pros. Two of them like immediately, and everyone since then. And I've beaten a lot of guys half a pro, and I did masters nationals a couple weeks after that. Didn't do as well. There was 32 guys in my class, and that was it. I'd done it for 24 years. I had a great time, met some amazing people. Always loved the challenge of dieting down, get as lean as I possibly could, because I knew I was never going to be the biggest guy. I wasn't blessed with really pretty shape and structure like some people were, but I could get super lean, and I was a master of presentation, showing off the strong points and sort of deflecting away from my flaws, my weak points. And like I said, it was an amazing run, and I have no regrets, no desire for a comeback. It was just a lot of fun.
Awesome, awesome. So what got you into the writing, reporting side of it all?
Okay, so I actually went to college for film. I was a film major, and the last semester I attended Emerson College in Boston the last 3 years. I had done UC Santa Barbara my first year, but Emerson had a program called Emerson LA where you would take a couple classes out there, but the main thing was to do an internship at something related to your field. And I had seen this show on ESPN at the time called American Muscle Magazine. It was a bodybuilding magazine format show that had contest coverage, athlete profiles, workouts, cooking, gossip, fashion. It was a really cool show. And I contacted the producer of that show, sent him a little demo reel from my film school stuff, said, I'm a bodybuilder. I'm also a film major. I'd like to work. See, and he actually hired me like a month into it. I wasn't even supposed to I was just supposed to be gone after 8 weeks. It was an internship, but he hired me. So I was supposed to be in Los Angeles only for 4 months. I ended up being there about 10 years because that's how I did it. And from there, I was writing scripts immediately for him. And then shortly after that, I began going out in the field and directing segments at the World Gym Venice, Gold's Gym Venice, training stuff. And once we did a preview for the Ironman Pro Show, which is no longer around. So that was a magazine, Ironman magazine, for many, many years. It's no longer around. But I went up to the guy, the owner, John Balick, the publisher, said, how does one go about getting published in your magazine? He said, well, send me something So we'll see if we like it. So I did. I faxed it to him. In those days, we had fax machines. FAX, look it up, kids. It was a real thing. So I faxed him the article, and I was in that magazine every month as a writer, a contributor for about 15 years from that point on. And then I moved on to Muscle Mag in Canada. Robert Kennedy, the late Robert Kennedy, bless his soul, gave me a ton of work. His magazine's American Health and Fitness. And I got into MD. I didn't get with MD until 2001, but I was with them all the way until they went out of business last November of 2023. I wrote for a lot of different magazines over the years. I had over I stopped counting at 5,000 articles that I had published. So I probably published something like 7 or 8,000 articles.
That's amazing. As a seasoned bodybuilding journalist, what do you believe are some of the most significant trends in the last, I would say, 10 years?
Social media changed everything. You know, you have to change with the times, you evolve or die. But social media made bodybuilding much more accessible to much larger amount of people. Because to be a bodybuilding fan prior to that, you at least had to buy magazines, which were, you know, not that much money, but they're still anywhere from like $4 to $10 for an issue. Now it's all right here. Everything's on your phone. YouTube channels, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, it's access. So we have a lot of people who are, I'd say, more fans of they follow a particular athlete or influencer more so than they're fans of bodybuilding. But we still have things like live streaming contests that weren't available. You know, years ago, you had to go to contests. You had to physically drive or fly to wherever they were being held, buy a ticket for however that much was, sit there. Now, anywhere from $20 to $50 on average, you sit at home and watch it you can stream it to your TV, to your devices, whatever. But social media has definitely it's been a good thing for the athletes too, because as much as I hated to see the demise of the magazines, because you know I made a very good living with magazines for a very long time, and I'm so appreciative of that. But I knew print, I could see the trend in general that print was going away and digital was taking over. But magazines were the gatekeepers to publicity for bodybuilders for many, many years, for decades and decades. You did not exist unless your pictures were in those magazines. Nobody knew who you were outside of your little gym or your little hamlet. Now, anybody, you don't need magazines, there are no magazines, but anybody can start their own Instagram page, YouTube channel, whatever, and get their own following, get sponsors, get brand deals. There's a lot more money in bodybuilding and fitness now than there's ever been. So that can't be a bad thing.
No doubt. And it's definitely a competitive space because it's been opened up. Do you find it challenging to get the best and first story when like a news break happens?
You know, when I was I was only with MD full time from January 2017 until they went away last fall. But my job as online editor was I had to be first. It was my duty to try to beat every other outlet out there. If some breaking news happened, unfortunately, you know, it's like someone died or something, which we saw way too much of that in the past few years. You have an obligation now. If you're not first, you're last. So if you're the first to report on something, you get the most views, the most clicks. Same thing with contest coverage, reports and stuff. We used to have to wait, you know, 4 to 6 weeks to see pictures and results in magazines. Now, instantaneous. You got to be there with clips from the live stream, wrap ups, winner interviews, like immediately. Like if Mr. Olympia has an interview right after he wins, it's that first interview that somebody gets that's going to get the most views. After that, it's going to drop off dramatically. So, yeah, YouTube, as you know, as a YouTube content creator, incredibly competitive. Just for example, because I went from a channel that already had 334,000 subscribers with MD to going back to my own, which I had sort of neglected for many years. I started it back in 2006 in the very early years of YouTube. And it was so easy to get views back then. I look back at some of my old videos that were just the most basic crap with horrible quality. And they used to get, some of them have like well over 100,000 views. Now, you know, 100,000 views it's not easy to get because it's a very competitive space.
Right, right. So I guess it would have been a conflict of interest to keep that channel, to keep those subscribers, even though you created that and did most of the work on it.
Yeah, I mean, I kept the channel. I didn't feel I didn't really put any new content out for a year for that whole time. So yeah, I didn't want to have a conflict of interest getting views that could possibly take away from MD because my main job as online editor was get the views, get the clicks, get more subscribers. That was always the bottom line. I kind of like, I was also still the senior writer for the print magazine, which I always enjoyed that job more because I didn't have to worry about being first. I didn't have to worry about somebody else getting more views than me. If I could just write a quality article, do a great interview with somebody, I could feel satisfied. But at other times, I might do a contest wrap up and then I see some other outlet, like one of our rivals, like RX Muscle or Nick Strength and Power or Desktop, somebody had more views. It was always kind of I felt like I had let my boss, Mr. Steve Bleckman, down because he was paying me good money to try to it was always beat the competition, very cutthroat and competitive.
Most definitely. So how do you approach balancing the need for accurate reporting while maintaining positive relationships with the bodybuilding community?
Yeah, that is a good question because a lot of the news that you report on is not necessarily going to be positive. If somebody has legal problems, I always tried to stay away from what I called the TMZ stuff, the stuff that to me was just gossip, it added nothing. The negative stuff, some guy got arrested for domestic violence or something. That's news, but I said somebody else will report on it. I don't need to touch that. I did feel the need to report on tragedies because somebody's a named bodybuilder. You have to report on it, and people would say, "Well, you're a ghoul, you're a vulture." I'm saying, "Well, you're watching CNN or you're watching any news outlet on TV. They're going to report on any celebrity dying. That's their obligation. That's big news." Same thing in our industry. If we lose a pro bodybuilder, a noted coach, somebody who's well known in the industry, it's news, and it's my obligation to report on that. But I always felt bad because at the same time, as you know, as a content creator, part of your job is monetization of the videos. And I always, occasionally somebody'd say, "You creep, you monetize that video," saying, "Well, if I didn't monetize every video that had something that might offend somebody, good Lord, we wouldn't have any monetization at all." And again, that was part of my job as the online editor. I was supposed to bring in ad revenue for the company.
Yes, yes. Bodybuilding is definitely somewhat subjective, and there is a lot of constructive criticism that comes with the journalistic part of it. And so I do have observed some hurt feelings from bodybuilders and content creators and reporters. How have you handled that?
Like I said, the easiest thing for me is to try to avoid that in the first place by not saying anything that's speculative. I try to stick with facts. If I have an opinion about something, I make sure and state that it's my opinion, it's not a fact. You're still going to ruffle some feathers. You're still going to hurt feelings because at the end of the day, even if you're reporting on a contest and you agree with the decision, because the sport is so subjective, it's like a beauty pageant with muscles, basically. Not everyone is going to agree. You're never going to have everyone in agreement over the results of a contest. And they're going to be the fans of one guy that didn't win are going to be very upset about that. Just take this last Mr. Olympia, perfect example. Top two guys were Derek Lunsford and Hadi Choopan. They went down to the wire. It was a nail biter. I had no idea which way it was going to go. And I really had a tough time deciding myself. I thought they both looked so fantastic. In the end, the judges, you can't have a tie at the Mr. Olympia. They got to pick one. So if you say you agreed with the judge's decision that Derek Lunsford was the rightful winner, now you have all the Hadi Choopan fans, and there are millions and millions of them. They're going to be very, very upset at you. So yeah, it's a fine line. You can't please everybody all the time, and if you never make a stand, if you never have a solid opinion, you're just wishy-washy. It's to me that's just a cop out.
Yes, most definitely. So we know that like integrity and ethics are important in journalism and reporting the facts and the truth. Bodybuilding is not mainstream, and it definitely has controversies. How do you maintain like the integrity and ethics around this type of journalism?
It's like I said, it's more difficult in a sport like bodybuilding where it's judged subjectively because it's not cut and dried. There are referees and so forth in professional football, baseball, basketball. So not every call, not every decision is going to be, uh, you know, fully accepted by all the fans, especially of the team that loses. But in bodybuilding, it's so different because some fans are going to have different ideals and things that they hold in higher priority. So if their favorite guy has prettier shape and he's more conditioned than another guy, and those are the two things they value, but he gets beat by a guy that's much bigger, they're gonna have a problem with that. I don't always agree with every decision either, believe me. But I think the judges do, on the most part, a really good job. I've judged myself, and it's so hard. The
Mhm.
higher the level you get, the tougher it gets because the people are better and better, and you have to start looking for little flaws and little differences to place one guy or girl ahead of another one. At a local show, you'll usually have a couple people that really stand out, and then it's pretty clear. Well, this one deserves second, third, fourth. Once you get up to the Arnold Classic, the Olympia level, they on their own, each guy in the top 10 probably looks like, wow, perfect. How could anybody beat that? But you put 10 perfect people next to each other, you still
Mhm.
have to do first, second, third, fourth place on down the line.
Yep, yep. So this is a good question. What role do you see bodybuilding writers playing in shaping public perception of the sport, and how do you think this influence can be used responsibly?
I don't know that writers have much of an influence anymore. If I'm going to be honest with you, Lisa, I
Okay.
don't know because there's no print anymore.
Mhm.
There are no
There's
print
no
magazines.
gatekeepers.
It's all YouTubers. And someone like myself who has 30 plus years experience in the industry, that doesn't make any difference. Somebody else could just come along who's just started following bodybuilding a couple of years ago. Maybe they're great at editing, they're good looking, they have a great personality, they know marketing and they know all the social media tricks. They could easily build a massive following of people. Prime example, there's a young guy, Nick Miller. I actually like Nick a lot. Nick Strength and Power. He is the king of bodybuilding reporting right now. I don't think he's even 30 yet, but
Mhm.
that channel has been going strong and strong. He's got like 1.3 million subscribers. Every video gets a minimum of 100,000 views. He
Mhm.
does a fantastic job. So it's not like back in the day when, you know, anybody can start a YouTube channel or an Instagram page, but YouTube's a perfect example because to be a writer in the magazines back in the day, there was a gatekeeper that was called the editor, and you submitted writing samples and so forth. And if they didn't think you were quality enough or good enough writer, they weren't going to publish your stuff. Now anybody can publish anything on YouTube, and it's up to the public to decide whether they like it or not. And as much as we might not like what the public likes, we might not agree with it all the time. I think there's a phrase that makes sense: is the public is never wrong. Whatever they like, they like. There's a lot of pop music I think is just absolute garbage, garbage. It hurts my ears, but it's number one on the charts. And who am I to
Yeah.
say if millions and millions of people love it and want to listen to it every day? They're not wrong.
Mhm. No doubt. So how do you think bodybuilding, oh, scratch that. How do you approach covering bodybuilding competitions and events?
Okay. I want to give the fans and the viewers at home the experience that they're there. I want it to be as close to showing them. Obviously, they can get the stream and they can watch things in real time, but I also want to give them any insights that they can't get necessarily from watching a flat screen in 2 dimensions. I do the interviews with the athletes so they get some insight into the actual personalities and maybe what this person went through on the way to preparing for the show or what this victory means to them. I always like the wrap ups with a good analyst too. Like I'm going to be working with Jose Raymond at the New York Pro in a couple of days. This will probably air after that, but I like working with people like Jose and Giles Thomas from UK. Milo Sarshev is another one. People that have a real passion for the sport and this really great eye, and they can help explain to the fans what the attributes were. Why did this guy beat that guy? What did this one need to do to place better? Why did this person? What is it about this athlete that the judges saw that they didn't see in that athlete? And working with people like that, it's a great opportunity for me to educate the fans because, like I said, there's a lot of new fans to bodybuilding thanks to social media. And I think that's fantastic. But a lot of them have no idea how these things are judged. They might have like a favorite guy or girl, and they don't understand if their guy or girl doesn't always win. Like they think it's politics or robbery. They don't get it. But if they watch a wrap up with some expert commentators discussing the decisions and why they think that they were made that way, then they can go, oh, okay, well, this person wasn't in great condition, or they still needed more back thickness or legs thigh sweep or something like that. So I like being able to do that.
Most definitely. So I met you at the Arnold Classic, and and I've seen you a couple times since then, and I see how hardworking you are and behind the scenes. Can you share a little bit of some maybe behind the scenes experiences that the audience may not be aware of when covering bodybuilding?
Yeah, I mean, what I'd like to give props to, especially the photographers, because I don't think they get enough recognition. So I'm usually in the press row. It's usually like the first 2 rows, media row, whatever it's called, and that's for the photographers, and some of the writers get to sit there. And the photographers in particular, they don't get to leave those chairs for hours, hours, hours on end. They're taking tens of thousands of photos now, especially with digital, where everything's stored on memory cards and everything. But you do get to see things differently when you're that close. Usually, we're right behind the judges. You get the same vantage point as the judges, so you're seeing things that even the live stream a lot of times isn't going to show you. So you'll get a better understanding of what this person, what this athlete had that allowed them to beat this other guy. But just I just love the ambience, the whole atmosphere of the contest. I'm really excited about getting back to New York Pro because I haven't been to a pro show since the last one I covered for MD was the 2023 Olympia. And so a lot of us who have been in the industry for many years, that's the only time we see each other is at these shows. And that press pit, it's always like a little reunion. People I've known for 20, some of them close to some of them 30 years. I see a lot of like retired athletes that I saw come up from amateur to pro and then retire. And yeah, it's just cool to be able to still be doing it after all these years.
Yes, yes. Can you share any memorable interviews or interactions you've had with iconic figures in the bodybuilding community?
I've been very fortunate to interview just about everybody at one time or another. I guess that the famous person I ever interviewed was Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it was over the telephone. Unfortunately, it wasn't face to face. It was about a month in the making, and because he was going to be on the cover of Muscular Development MD, it was our Arnold Classic issue. So we went through his whole team, publicist, manager, this and that. I was told that I was going to be given a call and I would never know when the call was going to come. And that would be from one of his assistants. And at that point, the assistant was going to give me like a 5-minute notice saying I was going to get a call from an unknown number, and that would be Arnold. So I took my phone everywhere with me, the bathroom, everywhere for about 3 weeks, kept it on my nightstand when I was asleep with the ringer on, everything. And he finally called, and he had a very good idea of everything he wanted to say. He had a lot of opinions at that time about how he wanted the sport to change. He wanted to get rid of the big guts in the sport. He wanted posing to be looked at as something that was more important again. I honestly, it wasn't so much his interview as it was like a lecture. I got a few questions in, but like I said, he had an agenda. He knew exactly the things he wanted to get out there, and he put them out there. And I basically, at the end, thanked him and transcribed it, and that was a cool interview. But yeah, I mean, I look back at some of the people I was able to interview that are no longer with us, and just I'm so grateful I had the opportunity because you never know. You think everyone's going to be around forever, but obviously that's not the case. We've lost a lot of people in this business.
Yep, yep. That's cool that they, left a lasting impression and you were able to maybe have, some of the last interviews with them.
Yeah.
So thinking of, I know you've interviewed quite a few. Do you ever get nervous interviewing some of these like big names, like when you come across a Ronnie Coleman or?
It's not so much the name. It's if it's somebody that I've never interviewed before, I never know how they're going to react because some people really don't like to do interviews in press. It's just not their nature.
Mhm.
So they're not going to be as cooperative in setting up the interview and being accessible and things like that. And then once I get on with them, a lot of them, I should say some athletes, they're not trustful of the media. They're afraid they're going to be misquoted, or they think I have an agenda maybe to make them look bad or something, which I never do. It was always my mission to put them in the positive light, the best light possible, the sport in the best light possible. But I could say that there were some people, it took me a couple interviews before we were comfortable. And then from then on, it was very easy because there's some guys like Ronnie, Evanson, Apani, Jose. There's probably a short list of about 6 people, Lee Haney, that I just always looked forward to interviewing after the first couple times because it was like just talking to somebody you'd known your whole life.
Yeah, definitely. There are some bodybuilders that are very good. They have the gift of gab, like a Sean Ray. They would be an easy interview. Others might feel like you're pulling teeth to get them to talk.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's it. But when you get somebody that's not a real talker, it's a struggle because especially, at that time I was using these interviews for articles. So I had to get like 2,000 words minimum out of them somehow. And if I have 20 questions and they're giving me 1-word answers, it's I know I can't put words in their mouth, but like I said, some people like have the gift of gab, they're garrulous like a Sean. Other people, Not so much, but I find that after, if you can sort of get them at ease and comfortable, once they realize you're on their side, you're just trying to make them look good, you want to tell their story and get more information out for their fans, they usually relax. And usually by the second or third time you interview them, if it happens, things go so much more smoothly.
Yes, yes. So you've been in the sport for 3 decades. You've seen a lot of things. What do you believe are the biggest challenges facing professional bodybuilders today, both on and off stage?
I would say the stigma of the PEDs, the drugs, because PEDs are used in just about every sport. I think that's common knowledge at this point. But bodybuilders wear it on their sleeve because they use it specifically to enhance the way they look. It's visually obvious that they're using PEDs, whereas in baseball, you might not realize that the guy who hits the home run 100 yards uh, further than the other guy might be using steroids, or the guy that runs a little faster than the other one at the Olympics might have been on drugs. But bodybuilders, you see it so readily. And I think that's what kept us out of the Olympics. The late Ben Weider tried to get bodybuilding to be recognized as an Olympic sport and made it as part of the Olympics. Is just, he's tried his whole life, decades and decades. It never happened. So there's still that public perception. And that's why bodybuilding went away from TV. People, they don't realize when I started out, when I was a teenager and through my 20s, bodybuilding was on television, major networks, NBC, ABC, CBS. They used to put the Mr. Olympia on. Even in the 90s, when I was working on that production company, we produced special 1 hour specials for ESPN for the Olympia, the Arnold, the USA, the Ms. Olympia, the NPC Nationals used to be on, the Junior Nationals. But eventually, even ESPN, they wanted to distance themselves
What
from
year
that
was that?
image. Which one?
What year was it that they stopped putting it on TV?
I'm gonna say it was around 96, 97.
What happened?
Yeah.
They were like,
I,
that's it.
I don't know if there was a meeting or series of meetings at ESPN. It
There
just
was,
went away.
the steroid act that was passed in the early 90s where
Hmm.
they did the testing, and it was like maybe that was just kind of the snowball
Yeah,
effect.
because I remember, 95 and 96, I was out there for the Arnold for ESPN. We did a 1 hour. We did the Olympia, I want to say every year from 91 to 96. I remember being on that, the crew for that show. So it had to be like late 90s at some point toward the end of the decade
Mhm.
that they decided we can't put this on TV anymore.
Right.
But we have YouTube, so who needs it
Right.
anymore, really? Who needs
Exactly. I
it?
was about to say, I mean, the times have changed. Who watches TV anymore?
Exactly. Exactly.
The power has shifted.
Mm.
So let me ask you, how do you think bodybuilding as a sport can continue to evolve and attract new audiences in the future?
I think it's doing a great job of that. And again, it goes back to social media that has such a reach. Everybody's on Instagram. I don't think I'm not on TikTok. I don't know if you are, but I mean, there are these platforms that have billions of users. Anybody can you can share things to multiple accounts. Things go viral. I think it's taking care of itself. I think that's why bodybuilding, the sport, I don't think is ever going to grow to a mainstream popularity the way that other sports do, because to actually follow and watch a competition, it takes a real investment, and you have to be sort of educated to know what you're looking at, to appreciate it and really find it interesting. The casual fan, we have a lot more people that are fans of a bodybuilder. Like this young Sam Sulek kid has millions and millions of followers. And I'd say 90% of them don't give a crap about competitive bodybuilding. They would never even be interested in watching a competition, but they like watching this big jacked kid work out and flex and talk about his workout and watch him eat all his junk food, stuff like that. So we have all these stars that are at least propagating and making the lifestyle itself. So there are more people working out than ever before. That's a positive thing. I don't see the sport it growing that much, but I should note that the NPC and IFBB over the years, the two biggest competitive organizations, amateur and professional, they've added these different categories, open it up. When I started out, there was only bodybuilding. So if you said you competed, people knew you were a male bodybuilder, female bodybuilder. There was nothing else. Eventually, they added fitness, figure, men's physique, classic physique, wellness, all these other divisions that give people of different body types and different levels of development a chance to compete. So that has opened it up. Like I just went to a big show in Boston, a regional show a couple weeks ago here, the Jay Cutler Classic, and there were so many people, so many women competing in bikini and wellness and figure. So and there were no women competing in bodybuilding, not one showed up. So if these other divisions had never been created, we wouldn't have all these people that do come out and compete.
Mhm.
So yeah, it has grown in that aspect quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely becoming more big business. Definitely.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you mentioned Sam Sulek because I'm still trying to figure out what the appeal is there. Like, I get he's a regular guy, but I mean, the way that he's blown up, like, I'm like, is it AI bots that just have created so many subscribers there? Like, what's going on with what do you think his appeal is?
So exactly, I couldn't figure it out at first. So I said, let me watch a couple of his videos. He's got this physique that they would all love to have. He's their age. They can relate to him. He's 20. I think he just turned 22. He's a young guy. He's got that bushy broccoli hair that they all have now. Uh, Horrible complexion, like a lot of them have. So they can relate to him. He's not this perfect Greek god movie star looks, but more important than that, he's humble and relatable in his videos. He just talks normally. It's very natural and organic. He doesn't sound like he's acting. His videos don't have any fancy editing. It's just real basic cuts. No crazy. It's just a young guy that loves training, loves lifting heavy weights, and he's enormous. These kids, they want to look like him. I would bet you good money. 95% of his followers are young males. I'd say like 15 to 25-year-olds.
Wow. So like the authenticity is coming through. It's not all the fancy video editing that
Yeah.
people want to get back to just kind of a real conversation with somebody that comes through on the screen.
Yeah, he does. He comes across as very real.
Mhm.
And because like I said, the editing was getting out of control.
Yes.
Somebody with a very mediocre physique could have just crazy editing skills with the blasting music and all kinds
Yeah.
of fancy cuts and effects going on, and try to entice people that way. But this kid, I think it's the simplicity of it and the rawness and the reality that made him so beloved by. I mean, God, I think he's got like 5 million followers on Instagram. I might be way off. He might have way more
Yeah.
than that. He has a huge fan base.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see where he is 5-10 years from now and the trajectory he's on.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. One of the things that I really enjoy about your channel is that you do a look back of previous Olympias that I think is very valuable, especially for someone like me, new to the sport. I never saw the 1981 Olympia, for example. I don't
Yeah.
even know who came in second, third, fourth, but you'll take a look back at these, and it's very cool because you give commentary, because it's not just looking, you're giving an explanation of why this one placed over this one, and that's very helpful to someone who's new to the sport. So I really like that series on your channel.
I mean, we have such a great history. And like I said, that I'm glad that there are so many new fans, but I want them to know that, there were bodybuilders before Sam Sulek. This is something that's been going on they're standing on the shoulders of all these giants before them. And there were great bodybuilders in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, so many of them that this newer generation of fans is not aware of. So I want them to know how good the sport was, or what quality of competition we had. I'm not saying it was better than the present day, but baseball fans, football fans, they know that there were these greats back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. They're well aware of that. A lot of the newer fans of bodybuilding have no awareness of the greats that came in the past. So especially if it's a show I was personally at, I like to be able to look back and remember, this is what I saw, because I was usually right there up front. And I saw some amazing competitors and some great battles over the years. I just like to be able to share that because it was a great era.
Mhm. What would you say are the top 3 most controversial Mr. Olympias?
Of all
Like,
time,
yeah, what 3 years would, if somebody wants to go back and look at the 3 top most controversial ones?
I'd say 1980 when Arnold Schwarzenegger came back after 5 years away. That was the year that he went out to Sydney, Australia, ostensibly as a TV commentator, but then he showed up backstage in warm-up suit, and surprise, surprise, he was competing. A lot of people had him no higher than 4th or 5th place at that particular show, but he won, and a lot of people said it's just because he was Arnold. It was
In your
politics.
opinion, did he win the 1980?
No, no,
You would have
no.
given it to who?
Who was second that year? I mean,
Was it
Frank
Mike
Zane.
Metzner?
No, Mentor wasn't. He was like down in 5th.
Frank
I'd have to
Zane?
look at Chris Dickerson was up there. There were a few guys. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I just remember he wasn't the best. He was smaller than he had been ever. Condition was good, but the sport had sort of already evolved. He'd been gone for 5 years. His physique wasn't even as good as it had been as far as I was concerned. Yeah, I wouldn't have given that. And then another one came with his good friend Franco Colombo, his training partner, the late Franco. That was the 1981 Olympia. The very next year, this happened. Franco won his second Olympia title, and his legs were completely downsized. He had torn a quad, I think it was. He was doing a world strongest. He was coming back from a really horrible injury. He did not look that good. He
Is that
again,
the one where
looking
he's
at,
carrying the refrigerator on his back?
yes,
Such a crazy
correct.
video. It's like his leg snapped.
Yeah, I think it like folded right under him. It was
Yeah.
horrible. So he did not deserve that win. Again, I think like everyone in the top five that year beat him handily. That was a tough one. Um, a lot of people will go back to the 2007 Olympia where Victor Martinez got second place to Jay Cutler and Jay was off. Victor looked better than he ever had. Um, geez. Uh, yeah. That's only
Any of the
three.
Phil Heath runs? Do you think Kai could have won?
He could have, but there was none of those years where Phil was off where you could point to it. Like there were years when Dorian Yates came in noticeably off and he still held the title. And he had torn his bicep a couple years into his Olympia reign, never got it repaired. So he had one bicep that went all the way to the elbow, another one that went like a halfway.
Right,
And at that time they had a symmetry round. It was the first round of judging. How do you win the symmetry round with one bicep that's half the size of the other? He
right.
was just off. Lee Haney, the great Lee Haney, 89 and 90, he was off.
Hmm.
Both years he could have been beaten by Lee Labrada. Could have.
Hmm.
But yeah, there was this attitude, or I guess it wasn't an official policy, but they used to say you had to knock out the champ, meaning you had to catch Mr. Olympia way off, way off, and you had to be at your very best ever to justify beating him. Because as the reigning champion, as the incumbent champion, he supposedly was like impossible to beat. Like he would have to look like he had never even dieted for them to justify giving it to someone. Things have been much more equitable, much more fair. The judging, especially over the past decade, we have had 5 different Mr. Olympias in the past 6 years. So if you show up, even if you're Mr. Olympia, even if you're not off, but somebody looks a little bit better than you, they're going to give it to that guy now. I hate to say, but the judging back in the old days was a lot of times it was bullshit. It was horrible, very political.
Yep, definitely. And they had these long reigns where they, 8 times in a row, 7 times in a row, 6 times in a row. But now I think, we probably won't see that again.
I don't think we're ever going to see that again.
Yeah, you're going to see, which makes it more interesting to the viewer, the audience, to have somebody new come along and, new competition. And I think it increases the morale of the bodybuilders knowing that, hey, we're not going to have somebody win it 8 years in a row.
Yeah. In fact, I think it was Giles said this after the third win, the fans start to turn on you because they get sick of seeing the same guy every year. They might love Dorian Yates or Ronnie Coleman or Lee Haney, but after a while, it's like, can we get someone new up there? Let's give somebody else a chance. And
Yeah.
they hated seeing these champions come in off their best and still keep the title. It's like, what's the judging even for if you're just going to let this guy keep his title anyway? And yeah, the athletes, it was very demoralizing. It's like, well, no matter how good I look, we had guys like Sean Ray, Flex Wheeler, Kevin Leveroni. Each of them came in looking better than the Mr. Olympia that they were trying to beat on multiple occasions. And still they were denied.
Yeah.
And if I were them, I'd be like, why am I putting my heart, my soul, my blood, sweat, and tears looking as good as I possibly can, knowing even if I look better than that guy, they're still going to let him keep his title. They're not going to let me win.
Yep. What are your thoughts and opinions on classic physique, them introducing that as a new field, and then or should we get rid of it and just everybody goes into open?
No, I think it's a great thing because a lot of guys were never going to get that big no matter what they did. And a lot of guys did not want to do what it takes in terms of PEDs and just the volume of food. Plus, they didn't want to destroy the look. Why Chris Bumstead, I think if I could look like either Chris Bumstead or Derek Lunsford, I'd look like Chris Bumstead. I would choose that physique. It's 2 different looks and 2 different divisions, but why do we have to say that only the bigger physiques are better? Why is bigger always better? back in the day, we had guys like Lila Brada, uh, Francis Benfato, Bob Paris, Muhammad Makawe, Frank Zane, guys who weren't enormous at all, but they had just perfect, beautiful shape, tiny little waist, Serge Nubret, nice round muscle shapes, just a beautifully sculpted look. And a lot in the current era, if we didn't have classic physique, those people would have no chance. They would always just get beat by the bigger guys because size is a big determining factor. So I'm glad they created it. Gave the fact that there's a weight cap, a cutoff. You can't weigh more than this if this is how tall you are. That's great. There's no temptation for these guys to try to get bigger and bigger than the next guy. Because that's what happened in bodybuilding. When we were getting those big guts that were a problem for years and years, it was because it had become a mass monster contest, a size game. And people knew, guys knew the only way they were going to stand a chance of winning the big shows was get as big as humanly possible and then some. So I think it's a healthier look. I think it's a more attainable look. And it's the popularity, my goodness.
Mhm.
Instead, you go to any show, whether it's a regional show, a national level amateur show, the numbers for classic are always much, much higher. There's a lot more competitors in classic than the open bodybuilding because, like I said, it's a more attainable look, it's healthier. And a lot of guys really don't want to look like a refrigerator, look like they can't move.
Right, right. So the gut was the HGH, and we're seeing less guts today. Is that because they're taking less human growth hormone?
I think it was a combination of the growth hormone, insulin, and just overeating. I look at pictures from when I was a natural competitor, and I didn't get into growth hormone until I retired from competition. But toward the last few years of competing, my midsection was getting thicker and thicker and thicker, and it was just from accumulated years of regular steroids and a lot of way more food, just overeating, stretching out my organs to the point because I wanted to get bigger and bigger. I was 5'8", and I wanted to be top of the heavyweight class as an amateur, which is 225. Never did get there, but I was fighting my genetics and trying to get bigger and bigger and taking more gear, eating more food. That alone can make your gut grow. I know because I did it, unfortunately.
Mhm. But the good news is it's not permanent. I mean, the guy that is known for it is Dave Palumbo, and he had a big one when he was competing, and now he doesn't have a gut. So you can reverse it, right?
You can reverse it. I even like Rolly Winkler toward the end of his Olympia years, he was getting a gut, and I don't know what adjustments he made exactly, but he got his significantly down. In Dave's case, he lost 100 pounds of muscle to do it. I don't know how reversible it is. I have seen some people do it. Once you built it and you're still carrying all that muscle mass, I don't know what you can do with it. But I have seen plenty of guys like Dave who have walked away from all the gear use and shed a significant amount of muscle mass, and they have managed to get those midsections much, much smaller again.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I have to touch on this topic, and that is the importance of mental health and mindset in the world of competitive bodybuilding. Can you discuss the importance of that?
I think bodybuilding attracts a lot of people who come to it from a place of insecurity, and they're trying to use it to compensate for feelings of not being good enough or not being as good as some other people, trying to use it as like to build basically this gorilla suit, this
That's
armor of
Bob
muscle.
Harris.
Yeah, that's a great book. I read it many years ago. Great book. So yeah, it can become an obsession. It can become something where you're obsessive compulsive, where you can't miss a meal or you just freak out. You can't miss a workout, or it destroys you mentally. And the I guess the most harmful aspect is probably bigorexia, which was muscle dysmorphia, which was actually a psychiatric condition coined by Dr. Harrison Pope at Harvard, where the as big as you get bigger and bigger and bigger. You look in the mirror and you still see a small guy, and so that can lead people to just keep bulking and bulking and pushing more and more gear and food. And I think it's caused a lot of deaths, to be honest, because there's a lot of guys who just kept chasing size, and especially even after they retired from competition, they still they felt like if they lost any muscle, people wouldn't like them anymore. They wouldn't respect them. They couldn't stand to see themselves any smaller in the mirror. So you got a 50-year-old guy who's still trying to be 300 pounds of muscle. The poor heart can only take that stuff for so long before either your heart, your kidneys, or something's got to go.
Mhm.
So yeah, it can be the mental aspects can also transfer into your physical health. in a bad way.
Yeah, this might be anecdotal. I'm not sure of the research on it, but I've heard that like tren can cause psychosis or trigger
Oh,
that. Have you heard
yeah,
anything
I'm
like
sure.
that?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I think there's evidence of that. I know that when I was on certain drugs, Tren being one of them, uh, Masteron, I was never, it was a bad thing. Toward when I used to diet for shows, dieting alone, being calorie deprived and hungry and tired is going to put you on edge. But then if you throw in to the mix very highly androgenic agents like a Tren, like a Masteron, a lot of test, yeah, your temper is going to be you're going to have a very short fuse. Your relationships can suffer. If you're a parent, you can be very short with your kids and yell at them for stupid things. I regret. I remember one time yelling at my son. He was probably 2 years old at the time. I got some new sports car that was like my pride and joy. He was in the back seat, and I had given him munchkins, these little donut holes from Dunkin' Donuts,
Mhm.
to eat on the way back from daycare to the house, and he got a bunch of crumbs on the leather, and I yelled at him, and I'm thinking, you're the one that gave him the donuts, and you're yelling at your 2-year-old son. You
Mhm.
know, I couldn't blame the diet or the drugs, but yeah, they put you on edge. I was a different person. I was a worse husband. I was a worse father. Yeah, these drugs, especially, they're horrible on relationships. This is I won't go too deep into this, but you know, some of these drugs really just amplify your sex drive to a ridiculous degree, which if you're supposedly faithful married husband, it's just a bad mix to have that in your system at all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, drugs are bad.
Definitely, the ones that are taking it, they have to have a management plan in place so that you don't have these issues, right? They have to think, what are the strategies that you need to do to cope with some of these adverse side effects?
I don't know if that's even possible. I mean, I once I was off the drugs,
Mhm.
I wasn't psychotic anymore. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't have those. My mind wasn't working the same way.
Mhm.
So I hate to throw that word crazy around. I know that's a terrible word to use, but I felt like I was crazy some of the times on like Tren or
Irrational.
irrational, just making a lot of illogical, irrational thoughts, and just yeah. And I don't have those thoughts anymore. So it was clearly induced by the drugs.
I always wonder, like after Mr. Olympia, like the very next day, when they have the post competition like come down, I would assume there's like a drop. Even if they won, there's a drug drop. There's a post competition come down that they have to like maneuver.
I mean, to give a very personal story, 2013, July 2013, I did my final contest ever. I had done two shows 2 weeks back to back. Anyway, I was in prep for 20 weeks. I was on a heavy drug cycle for about 20 weeks. And then I stopped it the day that went at the contest, I was done. A week later, I go on a family vacation. We drove down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I was just crazy. I was like, one minute I'd be like sad, the next minute I'd be angry. I was going through because I still had all these hormones trying to just sort of uh, pass their way out through my system. My body was just trying to detoxify. Plus you still have this. I don't want to compare it to postpartum depression. That's a very real and something I don't want to compare it to experience wise.
EMS.
But sure, no, I mean, but postpartum depression. I say that for a lot of competitors because you spend months and months and months, just like a woman gestating a baby. Everything's leading up to that one big day. Every meal was regimented, every minute of sleep, every workout, everything was geared toward that one moment in time. And then it's gone. It's over. The contest is over. And you're like, well, what do I do now? You just feel lost. You feel empty. You feel like, it was always mentally the times right after contest were a struggle. Plus, then you're eating I was always binge eating right after a show. So I would regain a lot of body fat within a week or two. And then psychologically look in the mirror when you had just seen this great six-pack and veins and all that, and now it's gone. In a couple weeks, you can get rid of all that if you eat badly enough.
And
And then,
gain like 10, 15 pounds.
I used to my record was 22 pounds in 5 days
Wow.
from the show from a Saturday to a Thursday. I did 22
Yeah.
or I'd been 25 pounds.
What's
Yeah.
crazy? I saw a video of Derek Lunsford like the day after he won Mr. Olympia, and he didn't binge. He's still like, he has to be on. He was making a bowl of oatmeal, putting his whey protein in there. And I was like, you just won, like, have a donut. But no, like they're 24/7, 365 if you're going to compete at that level.
If you're the best in the world, and he's still doing photo shoots and video shoots and appearances, so that makes more sense. He really can't get fat. It's his job to be in shape and represent the title. But that's called reverse dieting, which a lot of people, in theory, that's what everybody should do. You're supposed to have your one big cheat meal after the show, and then you're supposed to sort of get back on your diet with a little bit of treats here and there. But you're not supposed to go all out for days and days and weeks like most
Yeah,
of us do.
it'd be shocking to the system.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give an aspiring bodybuilder writer who's looking to break into the industry?
I mean, this is the easiest time in history to do it. Easiest time. So it's also the most competitive time in history to do it, but you don't have to wait for somebody else to give you a chance or a platform. You make your own opportunities now with social media. It's just about creating content that people find engaging and interesting. Like people want to know, how can I be the next Sam Sulek? I don't know. He hit that formula. He was able to get a lot of followers and a lot of people who really are interested in seeing what he has to say and what he's doing every day. If you can be compelling like that, if you can have a certain voice that people want to listen to, create content that people just want to watch every day because they have so many options. You have to stand out somehow, some way, give them something that's compelling enough to watch your YouTube channel or follow your Instagram instead of somebody else's because they have millions of choices now.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you, Ron. I appreciate you coming in on my channel today and talking. I learned a lot from you and hope to see you at a future pro show, Olympia or Arnold.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.